This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, welcome to a brand spanking new edition of Real Talk. Excited for this show coming up in just a couple of seconds. We're going to talk to Stephanie Hughes. I love her beat with Bloomberg. This is great. She's a reporter, a business reporter, like an equities reporter. So she's covering, obviously, things like the Bank of Canada's rate increase just a short time ago, bumping the cost of borrowing up to 5%, or at least that's the benchmark, and Stephanie will get into it with us. But she's also reporting on the Hollywood strikes and kind of a cool angle on that, the business side, how it's impacting Canadians that are employed in the film industry. We're going to check in with her in just a bit. Karamveer Lalh will be joining us in about 20 minutes, an Edmonton-based lawyer. He's been a political staffer at the provincial and federal levels with conservative parties in Alberta and, of course, in Ottawa as well. His take on how Pierre Poilievre is managing all this, the messaging around those rate increases. You'll remember long before he was chosen, he was elected, he won that conservative leadership. Poilievre has gone on the record saying he would fire the Bank of Canada's governor, Tiff Macklem, for what essentially he says, my paraphrase, his inability to keep the cost of borrowing under control, his inability to manage inflation. So what's the right play here moving forward? How can Pierre Poilievre leverage the current reality right now to gain support for Canada's conservatives? And is the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, demonstrating hypocrisy, having criticized Mr. Poilievre in past for his criticisms of the governor of the Bank of Canada, now essentially saying the same thing, not going so far as to say he'd fire the governor. There's always kind of been this arm's length relationship, right? The general public and politicians, people in the public service for that matter, have long felt, and for good reason, that the Bank of Canada and other entities should operate at arm's length, away from political pressure. But sometimes politics is our reality. We'll get into that, and we'll be keeping a keen eye on what our live chat has to say about that. And we'll wrap up our show today, a conversation with a security expert. I'm grateful that Chris Hayden's agreed to join us. He's going to be here in studio. He served as a police officer. He had one of the coolest jobs in policing. He was one of the first officers up on Air One when Edmonton first got its police chopper. Now he works in executive protection. He's the guy that, well, he's not going to be able to tell us who his clients are, because that's kind of the whole point. He keeps VIPs safe. They do things like discreet airport pickups. They make sure that VIPs are arriving at their destinations unharmed, basically uninterrupted. All of this is based on what happened to the Prime Minister in Belleville, Ontario a while ago. We've been talking about it on the show. I tweeted about it yesterday, and my replies are an absolute dumpster fire. If you feel like wading through them, you can find them on my Twitter profile at Ryan Jesperson. We'll get into a few of those a little bit later on in the show. But essentially, I'm asking, are our politicians too accessible in Canada? Now, I know that there are varying opinions on this. A lot of you feel like a politician has to be out amongst the people. That's their boss, right? They've got to be there accountable to the people, meeting and greeting, pressing flesh, kissing babies. Others of you, of course, will remember many instances around the world, including in the United States, when politicians have been shot at, even killed. In Canada, where politicians have been assaulted or had to fight back for their own safety. Shawinigan handshake, anyone? Like Charles Adler and I talked about. I'm curious to see what Chris is going to say about that, having had experience in the field. And of course, we're going to take a look at the results of our unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll that we promised you yesterday, asking you, friends of Real Talk, where you get your entertainment, where you get your news, what sources you pay for. We're talking about streaming services, cable, and other subscriptions. A lot of you chimed in on that, about 1,000 of you, and I'm grateful for your comments, so we'll take a look on that before we wrap. Before we get to Stephanie, do you need safety training that actually makes a difference on your job site? Danatech has been the leader in Canadian safety training for over 30 years. Their online, blended, and instructor-led training courses combine regulatory compliance with real-world smarts and practical tips from experts who actually know how busy job sites work. You can visit danatech.com to check out their course catalog and train your team the right way today. This episode of Real Talk is presented by Danatech. Stephanie Hughes is a reporter at Bloomberg covering stocks and Canadian business news. That includes the Hollywood strikes, and we're grateful that she's made time to join us here on this episode of the show. Steph, welcome back. It's nice to see your face.
Nice to see you too, Ryan. Thanks for having me, and happy Tuesday.
A very happy Tuesday to you as well. Did your weekend include a trip to the theater to see Barbie? Were you one of the millions that made it out to check out the new movie?
You know what? No, not this weekend. I am deeply interested in watching Barbie and Oppenheimer, but no, I was actually quite boring this weekend. I was just a couch potato playing video games, but maybe next weekend.
Yeah, well, hey, everybody needs some downtime, right? What do you make of all the buzz around Barbie right now? A huge opening weekend, like over $150 million. It's a big deal, especially in an industry that's seen theaters kind of struggle.
I think it's really interesting. This has been kind of a bright spot after the news of the actors' strike, and I can't remember the last time somebody or everybody's been this excited over a double feature. And I think it's a much needed win for a lot of movie theater operators, like just because some of the box office, some of the blockbusters that they were hoping and betting on, like Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones, haven't quite panned out and gotten enough butts and seats. So this seems like it's been a so far so good moment for movie theater operators. We saw that in some of the share prices, and we'll see if they can keep the momentum going.
Yeah, you've written about this in particular, what you describe as the Barbenheimer bump for movie stocks. You and your colleagues, people can read it at Bloomberg.com. But this Hollywood strike has kind of clouded that weekend. There's really two storylines, aren't there, right? The big summer blockbusters that are out and the enthusiasm around them. And then at the same time, thousands upon thousands of people, quite frankly, and put plainly, the lower earners when it comes to Hollywood. We're not talking about the Dwayne Johnsons and the Margot Robbies. These two storylines that are equally, I think, relevant right now when you're evaluating the health of Hollywood.
100%. Yeah. And just to catch the viewers up to speed, both Hollywood actors and writers are on strike at the same time, a dual strike. This has happened, this hasn't happened since 1960 when Ronald Reagan was the president of the Screen Actors Guild. So Writers Guild of America began protesting in early May over residuals from streaming services, arguing that the alliance of motion picture and television producers' share of these residuals cut much of the writers' average income in recent years. Actors are also protesting over payment, and they're also citing concerns around the use of AI to replicate their voices and their likeness. So really interesting. Definitely this dual strike has far-reaching impacts from television and film studios, just seeing these production halts, these theater operators that are potentially seeing a hole in their 2024 lineup. And then, like you mentioned, some smaller production outfits, especially in Vancouver and Toronto, that are now seeing those production halts, and they are very dependent on U.S. production.
Yeah, let's talk about the Canadian implications. Obviously, if production shuts down stateside, the impact felt up north, to state the obvious, is hugely significant.
Of course, yeah. So Vancouver and Toronto, those are two major film hubs. Montreal also as well. I've only heard anecdotally some of the effects there, but it's a story that I'm definitely keeping an eye on, just to see how it affects Canadian companies and how it affects industries that employ a lot of people. And I've heard from a few friends in the industry that it's effectively a shutdown situation for a lot of them. So it's really unfortunate. And a lot of this hinges on both sides of the border for entertainment companies. A lot of it hinges on just how long these strikes take place. So a lot of analysts say, depending on if it goes on for a lot longer, spanning over a few months, this could have some impacts on production schedules and might actually prompt some companies to kind of shift around their scheduling and try to fill out that gap that they might be anticipating next year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Did you see this story? It was just being reported this morning that Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, has donated a 7-figure sum to SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, basically, as the Hollywood strike continues. They're saying it's a record donation. They're saying it's going to help 7,000 to 10,000 of those that are currently on the picket line, which is really remarkable to see. These are the types of things that grab people's attention, right? Pretty contentious language. It was leaked that I can't remember the source of the comment. Maybe you will. I'm putting you on the spot, but who was it? One of the Hollywood execs that basically said, we're going to hold out. We're going to wait until these people, these workers, start losing their apartments, start losing their homes. We've seen some pretty prominent actors fire back with strongly worded comments about different ways someone can lose their home, essentially threatening arson. That's the way I read into it anyway. I mean, this has really, really turned into a contentious situation, I guess, because you're talking about essentially, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars up in the mix.
100%. And I heard those similar murmurs, and it is encouraging to see just these heavyweights in the film industry back some of these people who really need a voice right now, are campaigning to get some fair pay there. And this shutdown comes at a time when a lot of these theater companies and movie studios were just finding their footing again after the pandemic shut down a lot of productions. So here in Canada, Cineplex just managed to get about 98% of its box office revenues it generated in 2019. So and another part of the actor strike is that it not only halts production, but there's also that marketing aspect of it where these actors go on press junkets to promote the movies. So there's going to be interruptions on that front as well.
Yeah, no kidding. That's interesting to hear that from you. If people are just tuning in on Mixlr, live streaming audio app presented by California Closets, we're talking to Bloomberg reporter Stephanie Hughes. 98% Cineplex had achieved of 2019 numbers. So in other words, pre-COVID numbers. That's pretty solid. I mean, considering a lot of people had wondered even, culturally, I mean, the sort of the health impacts, the mental health impacts, a lot of people still probably not yet fully back into their routine and some routines that have been interrupted. Maybe people haven't gotten back into them, whether or not there were health concerns. To know that a theater or a big company like that was back at almost 98, let's call it 100% of revenues pre-COVID, that had to have been a bright spot with sort of, I think probably, I would imagine if I was a Cineplex executive, I'd be feeling pretty good about that. What are stocks looking at right now? People can check out Bloomberg.com. You've laid it out well, but generally speaking, and we can put it up on the screen right now, is this hurt being felt across the board?
Well, from what I remember, and I didn't actually get a chance to check out the stocks this morning, but they did get some lift, especially on the Monday morning trading session right after Barbenheimer. For Cineplex, analysts from the big banks there said that this was a good news situation, but it also came with that little asterisk about the actor strike and where will this leave Cineplex down the line. So It was encouraging news as far as analysts were concerned, but there's still that storm cloud hanging over. Like, we have to see there's that uncertainty around the actor-writer strike, and will this be something of a short-lived celebration?
Yeah. I don't want to gloss over the other thing you brought up as well, which is fascinating. We don't have to get into it now, but concerns around AI replicating actors' voices and likenesses. Like, you wonder where that might be in 3 or 5 or 10 years, which is like an eternity when you're talking about tech. But that's a fascinating story to keep an eye on as well. Stephanie, I know you got a lot on your plate, but I do want to ask you as well about the most recent rate hike from the Bank of Canada. As we turn the page, that's one that you're covering as well. And this puts us now, I guess, in waters that a lot of people aren't necessarily used to seeing, the highest cost of borrowing in Canada in more than 20 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Bank of Canada, always market moving news coming out of that. So they delivered another quarter point rate hike in mid-July, bringing that trend setting policy rate up to 5%, the highest it's been in 22 years. And most economists were expecting this hike since price pressures are still a little too hot for the economy to handle. And it's a little bit too hot for the central bank's liking. So This came days before we saw headline inflation reading cool down to a year-over-year pace of 2.8%, brings it back into the control range of 1 to 3% that the Bank of Canada likes. But Tiff Macklem, the governor of the Bank of Canada, was adamant that that CPI level has to go back down to 2% before he's going to say mission accomplished. Why this matters to Canadians? Well, when that rate goes up, it means borrowing costs get a little bit steeper for people with mortgages, any kind of debt there. So, homeowners with a variable rate mortgage will start to feel that pinch a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more.
Yep.
And it's no wonder we're going to be talking just after we check in with you with a political strategist, a former staffer, about the political implications of all of this. It gives firepower to the opposition parties for sure. And it sort of appears as though the Prime Minister is feeling the heat as well, talking about how the most recent hike was unfortunate and not what Canadians were looking to see. Help me understand this, like in layperson's terms, Stephanie. You're the expert, but I'm just the talk show host. I see a tweet or messaging at least from the Deputy PM, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, and she says, inflation is back around in the range where, my words, not hers, they're comfortable, right? She said it was 2.8%, I think, most recent numbers, and that's a positive trend. That's the messaging out of the finance department, but yet another rate hike. So for the average person that's trying to understand how those two go hand in hand, what would you tell us?
Well, I would say that the Bank of Canada really doesn't want to take its foot off the gas, or it's signaled that it doesn't want to take its foot off the gas until it's sure that inflation is going to come back down to a comfortable level, or sorry, its target there. So they don't want to run the risk of not going far enough and having inflation reaccelerate at the same time that rates are high. So then Canadians are getting hit with that double whammy. You can argue that they're already getting hit with that double whammy since inflation's a little bit too hot to handle for a lot of consumers, but it is a far cry from that 8% peak that we saw months ago. So that is the good news. Also good news is that more economists, but not all, more economists are now expecting that we'll be able to avoid something of a stark recession despite these rate hikes. So the point, of course, is to put the brakes on consumer spending so that supply has a chance to catch up with rampant demand that really spiked after the pandemic lockdowns kind of lifted there.
You would never quote me in your Bloomberg reporting because this is all anecdotal, and I know that you need facts and numbers. That's why people trust your journalism. But anecdotally, I don't see anybody backing off on their spending. I see hot real estate markets in almost every major Canadian city. My brother just bought a house down in Calgary. He was telling me about people lined up outside showings, offering significant amounts above asking prices. Properties are selling in 24, 48 hours. Never mind in Toronto and Vancouver. Restaurants are packed. And I'm not saying that any of this is bad. I mean, half of these probably 90% of these restaurants fought to keep their head above water through the pandemic. So on one hand, that's great. It's great to see patios packed. It's great to see people driving new cars. It's great to see people feeling confident in where they're at or where the economy is going or where their personal financial outlook is headed. But at the same time, do you see evidence across the country that this rise in interest rates or the rise in the cost of borrowing is actually taking effect, is actually working?
It's a bit of a mixed picture because a lot of people will point to headline inflation dropping as an energy prices story, and that's more of a global dynamic there. I will say that real estate prices have been down from their peak. I believe it was in maybe it was a couple months ago, but there was a real acceleration in the spring market, but that's something we expect every year. Springtime is just going to be that time when people just come off the sidelines and start buying houses again. But a little bit of cooling in the national housing picture, but you'll still see pockets like in Calgary, especially as people decide that Vancouver and Toronto are less affordable, so they flock over there. And then there's some segments of the economy that you're just not going to get demand taken out of, like food or groceries. There's always going to be a demand for that because people need to eat. So
yeah,
it's you'll see it in some of the discretionary. I've noticed it in names like Aritzia. I don't know if that's directly tied to a inflation story, but we're seeing some of these discretionary names maybe kind of come under a bit of pressure. Maybe that's a seasonality. Maybe that's a sign of people deciding they don't really need to update their wardrobe if they need to really keep paying those rising mortgage costs there.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see. And this is the kind of thing where maybe we do a little bit of polling ourselves and more just, sort of the streeter style questions. How did people maybe adjust their summer vacation plans, stuff like that? I wonder, maybe the trips to Nova Scotia were put on pause in lieu of a trip to, somewhere a little closer. Maybe people are golfing a little bit less in the summer. Maybe they didn't buy the new boat. I don't know. I'd be curious to see. I think you don't want it either way, right? You don't want spending to screech to a halt, where retailers find themselves in a real jam and where the economy's not growing, and then at the same time you don't want people carrying way more debt than they should, and it's probably safe to say that a lot of people are finding themselves in that situation right now, having been accustomed to what I think it was Governor Macklem himself described as, what was it, like unusually or uncharacteristically low interest rates just 2-3 years ago. That's when a lot of people would have gone for those mortgages. But before I let you go, Steph, October of 2022 marked an interesting point, didn't it, with this trigger rate? Can you talk to us about what that means? I think that was really, I felt like that flew under the radar a little bit as part of the national conversation. Can you talk to us about the significant mile marker that was reached, not in a good way, in October of 2022?
Of course, yeah, I'd love to. I feel like it did fly under the radar a bit at the time. It was kind of buried in a report, but essentially, and maybe the figures are updated now, but the central bank estimated that about half of all variable rate mortgages with fixed payments have already hit their trigger rate, which means that these mortgage holders are just paying the interest. They're making no progress on actually cutting down on the principal. And they estimated that this was about 13% of all mortgages at the time. So alarming figures, and it does show that there's some impacts coming from these rate hikes.
Stephanie Hughes, a reporter with Bloomberg, and always a great friend of this show, in part because you help us make clear sense of some things that a lot of people, including me, don't truly understand. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
You got it. Karamveer Lalh coming up in just a second, a lawyer. He's got a relatively young guy, but he's got a lot of experience, having been a staffer for conservative parties, both provincially and federally. I'm curious for his take on the political angle of all of this, of an increase in the cost of borrowing. Wanted to let you know that these conversations are presented by Real Talk sponsors like the team at Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food. And if you are anywhere in Alberta's two major population centers, Edmonton and Calgary, or you happen to be in central Alberta, I want to grab your attention for a quick second. You probably know about all the health benefits of feeding your dog a raw food diet, but there's a special here for the month of July, and we want to, save you some money if we can for the entire month of July, which, of course, is just, I don't know, what is another week or so? 6 more days left to go. You can enjoy $10 off Grand Dog Essentials pork raw pet food. They're 40-pound boxes. Those are the ones we get. We fill the freezer for Moses and Monroe. You want to use the discount code July 2023 at checkout. This is a blend of whole Alberta pork, organs, and bone sourced from human-grade facilities. That means that the quality is impeccable, but they're including everything in the mix, so your dog is getting absolutely every bit of nutritional value that they can out of their Grand Dog Essentials quality raw food. If it's the time of year, by the way, where your pet is experiencing symptoms of allergies and you're trying to figure out exactly not only why, but what to do about it, check out the blog link at granddog.ca. If this summer is marking a change of pace for you, perhaps you're feeling optimistic, bold about a new career opportunity, you want to set yourself up for success with a post-secondary experience, you're going to want to take a second or two to check out athabascau.ca. It's Canada's open university. The best part about Athabasca U is that your only commute is to your device, and you've got the flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. So if it's 30 degrees out and everybody's heading to the beach, you don't have to be locked down in class. However, if it's one of those rainy days and you want to fast forward, you go right ahead. You dictate the course and the pace you're taking when you attend Athabasca University. That's athabascau.ca. We've told you how excited we are that our friends at the YWCA of Edmonton are the recipients. They're the partners this year for the K-Days 50/50. That's right, and this is going on all the way through till the 30th of July. But there's something I want to tell you about that's really important. Right now, there's an early bird deadline that is fast approaching. This is the WestJet Gift of Flight early bird prize draw. You've got to get your tickets purchased before noon on July 26th. That's tomorrow, noon Wednesday, and you could win a round-trip flight for two anywhere WestJet flies. Plus, of course, you'll qualify to win that big prize, that 50/50 from K-Days in support of YWCA Edmonton. You're going to want to go to k-days.com/50-50. We'll put it in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. I also tweeted about it if you're looking for a direct link. And as I pulled up to our house yesterday, what did I see outside but the owner, the founder and owner of Eden Landscaping? He had his tools out and he was wrenching on one of his bobcats. Yeah, that's right. They're working on our yard right now, but, well, something blew in the motor, and there was Mike. This is the guy, and he's the guy calling the shots. But he's getting the dirt under his fingernails, right? He's getting the hands all greasy. I said, is this a regular thing for you? He goes, man, this is all part of running your own business. I love dealing with these guys. From the design process all the way through to now, bringing our outdoor space to life. They've been a delight to deal with. And one of the reasons we hired them is because they did an amazing job working with a budget that for us was pretty inflexible, to be honest with you. You can check out more about what they do at Eden Landscaping by visiting their website. That's landscapeedmonton.ca. You can check out their portfolio, their services, whether you need a new water feature, an outdoor kitchen, a retaining wall, maybe just some simple excavation done to run a gas line out to heat your garage. Trust Eden Landscaping at landscapeedmonton.ca. Let's talk about the politics of the cost of borrowing. Let's talk about the politics of inflation, affordable housing, and pretty much everything else that impacts Canadians' bottom lines. Karamveer Lalh is a former political staffer with the Conservative Party of Canada and the United Conservative Party right here in Alberta. He's currently a lawyer practicing in Edmonton and a political commentator. You've likely read his work at thehub.ca. Karamveer, thanks for making time for us this morning, and welcome to Real Talk.
Ryan, it's always a pleasure being on your show.
Yeah, generally speaking, this rate hike for the average Canadian, pretty significant, because anybody working on variable rates, anybody with a line of credit, anybody whose cost of borrowing fluctuates every time the Bank of Canada makes an announcement has felt this pinch time and time again, it feels, over the past couple of years. How did it land with you when the governor made the announcement mid-July?
Well, certainly my student loans from, going to law school, those are on a variable rate. So I certainly felt it personally. I think whenever there's a rate hike, folks generally will feel it because most folks do carry, some sort of debt, be that, a mortgage, be there that student loans like myself. Or anything like that. So, rate hikes do generally impact everyone, for better or for worse.
Interesting to see the Prime Minister speak out, and I wouldn't say in as scathing fashion as Mr. Poilievre, the leader of the official opposition, but even Justin Trudeau saying just a few days ago that he knew that this wasn't what Canadians were hoping to see, that he was disappointed to see the rate increase. Were you surprised to see what seems to be a bit of a change of perspective from the PM?
Well, I certainly am unimpressed with, folks slagging the Bank of Canada. I think I've been fairly consistent on that perspective. So, generally the way that we handle inflation in this country is that inflation is, largely a result of, fiscal and monetary policy. Sort of the consensus is that you leave the politicians to deal with the fiscal stuff, so government spending, taxation, and then you leave the central bank, Bank of Canada, to deal with the monetary side of things. And so the reason we do that is because you have or you can develop political consensus around what you want the inflation target to be. But I think we've sort of, as a society, decided that politicians should be able to, tax and spend a little bit more freely and leave the monetary stuff to the central bank. And it's sort of that balance that keeps our economy from crashing, and we've seen the effects of hyperinflation in other countries, and certainly here in about a century ago with the Great Depression. And it's not pretty for anyone, regardless if you're rich or poor. So the comments by the I guess more center left to left leaning politicians that the Canadians who are less fortunate bear the brunt of these rate hikes. Well, I mean, they would also bear the brunt of high inflation as well. So it's sort of a difficult line to tread. And then politicians undermining the confidence of Canadians in the Bank of Canada, I think, is largely short-term, self-serving political tactic. Just because the Bank of Canada is sort of an opaque institution, doesn't really fight back. So it makes them an easy target, and I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah, you're never going to see the governor of the Bank of Canada replying to comments from a politician, or at least generally you wouldn't see it. Pierre Poilievre has I think established pretty quickly that one of his big foundational points of trying to get elected the next federal election is going to be talking about the cost of living. He's going to be talking about affordable housing. He's going to be talking about how a lot of Canadians are feeling like they're left behind. I mean, it's loaded language he's using, talking about how Canada's broken. But do you think that could come back to bite him? I mean, if I'm picking up what you're saying properly, threatening to fire the governor of the Bank of Canada, you think that that's something that could backfire for Mr. Poilievre?
Well, I don't necessarily think it'll backfire, just because the Bank of Canada is like a fairly easy target, right? But just because it's an easy target doesn't make it, good for politicians to go after them. We've seen, and then it also depends on like what exactly you mean by interference. So I think it's interesting because the two types of I guess criticism of the Bank of Canada, depending on if it's coming from Pierre Poilievre versus Trudeau, I think also the BC Premier, who of course is NDP, was of a little different flavor. So I think with Pierre Poilievre, he didn't talk a lot about whether or not he had any problems with the Bank of Canada's policy itself. So that policy, of course, is set by Parliament. Parliament dictates to the Bank of Canada, okay, we need to keep inflation between 1% and 3% every year. Pierre Poilievre, of course, saw that inflation was going up higher out of that band. And then his criticism was, Bank of Canada governor, Bank of Canada leadership, Parliament has sort of set this target for you. You're not hitting it. And therefore, you should be punished, I guess, lose your job, etc. That is different than, the current criticism, which is, Canadians don't want to see rate hikes. Well, one of them is saying that, hey, you should be, punished for not doing your job properly. The other one is saying, we don't want you to do your job properly. So I think both of those are concerning for different reasons.
Karamveer, I want to ask you about a piece that you recently wrote back on July 11th. It was published at thehub.ca. That's where people can read it. Hey, before I get there, what do you make of the subtle makeover for Pierre Poilievre? He's lost the glasses. They've got him in like the white T-shirts and the kind of casual blazers. That's a thing, right? That's significant. Has that been on your radar?
Well, yeah, I certainly think so. Image is important in politics, regardless of whether or not we like to, openly say so. I think Poilievre had a bit of an issue that he kind of came off as sort of your debate club nerd type fellow,
kind of smarmy.
Hero. Yeah, exactly. So I think, losing the glasses, changing the haircut is an effort to, I guess, tweak those criticisms and make himself, more attractive to certain, voters. Time will tell if that was effective or not.
Yeah.
I think the important thing is that it just comes off as genuine.
Yeah, I think that it like optically, it's working to soften his image. Be curious to see how long that lasts. It's not like, taking glasses off completely reinvents somebody, but it's a step, and I think it says something to the Canadian public. Reason I wanted to ask that before talking about your piece is that you talk about how the leader of Canada's Conservatives should embrace what you describe as optimistic conservatism for solutions. What would be an example of that? What's a direction you'd like to see the Conservative Party go under Poilievre's leadership that you think would really resonate with Canadians in the context of what we're talking about right now, cost of living, inflation, and the like?
I think that Canadians in general want to see that their politicians are actually, doing something. We have a lot of issues in this country. We have, the cost of living is one. Climate change is another. I think the direct example that I mentioned there was, trying to figure out how to best address climate change and all that. The suggestion that I made is, I think that if you, as a federal government, want to invest heavily in renewable energy and nuclear energy, that would be seen by Canadians as actually, doing something proactive to address the problem. Carbon taxation and the various tariffs and things like that. I don't necessarily know has the emotional saliency as building like a big nation building project. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about, okay, we're going to impose this tax on carbon. It's going to increase the cost of living for a certain subset of consumers. And what's the purpose of it? Like, global warming continues every year. Every year, the average temperature is higher. It's not like a big proactive thing. I think Canadians want to see, hey, the world is suffering and, my pocketbook is suffering. What are we doing actually to, solve those problems? So that I think was the main thrust of that piece. If the Conservatives can put forward a proactive solution and be seen as actually doing something material and meaningful on those big issues that Canadians care about, then I think that they would be better positioned for success in the next election.
Reasonable as always. Thanks for making time for us, my man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Yeah,
that's Karamveer Lalh. He's an Edmonton-based lawyer and political commentator. You can read his work at thehub.ca. We're going to get to a security expert in just a second, and if you've not been paying it, I mean, I'm assuming if you're listening to or watching Real Talk, you know exactly what we're getting at here. This mess that went down in Belleville, Ontario, the Prime Minister swarmed just a few days ago. But you and I, Johnny and I, we were wondering yesterday, are we letting people get too close to our politicians? Do we have to wait until one gets punched in the face or, heaven forbid, stabbed or shot before we start taking this a little bit more seriously? Or is it imperative for politicians to be out there amongst the crowds, to be working through the swarms? I'm curious for what Chris Hayden's going to say. That's coming up in just a quick second. But first, a message from the supporters of this show, of Real Talk. You know that oil sands operations contribute significant carbon emissions in Canada. So the 6 largest companies are working together and with governments to take strides on the path to net zero from their operations. Part of that plan includes developing a proposed carbon capture and storage network by 2030. It's going to be one of the world's largest. You can learn more today by visiting pathwaysalliance.ca. Our friends at Apex Automation want you to know that they are hiring right now. If you have an interest in working in upstream oil extraction, pipelines, natural gas processing, chemical manufacturing, potash mining, robotics, you name it, Apex Automation is there in the game. And they're looking for engineers, electrical, instrumentation, computer science, process, mechanical, electricians, and instrument technicians as well. You get the idea, right? There's a ton of opportunity at one of Canada's fastest growing firms. If it appeals to you to be based out of Alberta, if you'd like to maybe work out of Saskatchewan or maybe out of their new office down in Texas in the Lone Star State, you can get that conversation started today by checking out the careers link at apexautomation.ca. We're talking a lot about the cost of living, and a big part of that, as Stephanie Hughes just pointed out, is the cost of groceries. I want to put a couple of things on your radar. Our friends at Friesen Brothers are getting set for another big day. August 1st is another 15% off special. That means that at all 16 locations across the province of Alberta, they're going to knock 15% off grocery purchases of $75 or more. That's August 1st. And then, again, on September 1st, you got it, the first of every month, only at Friesen Brothers. Plus, July 29th and 30th from 4 to 8 p.m., only at their Edmonton Rabbit Hill store. Friesen Brothers presents a vegan feast. It's an all-you-can-eat vegan buffet featuring an incredible selection of plant-based delights, all of it available for just $25 per person. You can learn more by checking out friesen.com/vegan. That's FRESON.com/vegan. Well, we've been talking about this on the show. Couldn't ignore it on our Friday roundtable. We asked our panelists what they made of, as Charles Adler described them, the brutes in Belleville. And then yesterday as well, we talked about it here on the show. Are people getting, quite frankly, too close to our politicians? Charles Adler shared his take. If you missed it, you can find the highlights on our social media channels at Real Talk RJ on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also find it, of course, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch it on YouTube. But we wanted to reach out to somebody with experience in security, experience in policing, experience in VIP protection. And when I looked at my Rolodex, there was one name right at the top. Chris Hayden was a member of the Edmonton Police Service from 1979 through to 2005 in a variety of units, including patrol, street crimes, armed robbery, major crimes. He was an original member on the Chopper, that's Air One, and he served as a crisis negotiator for more than 10 years. He's now working for Hayworks Secure Driving Services. They work with sports celebrities, politicians, and entertainers. And it's a real pleasure, Chris, to have you here in the Real Talk studio. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we should let people know, full disclosure, it's not your first time in the Real Talk studio.
No, actually, I'm quite comfortable here, and I was here on the night of the election, but in a different role.
In a different role, making sure
the
that
nondescript role.
That nothing went sideways.
Exactly.
And it was really great to watch you work. You're great at working a crowd. You're not some heavy-handed security guy. You and your colleagues here with sunglasses on and earpieces in, but also no messing around. It's a fine balance, isn't it? Understanding how to interact with the crowd. Now, we didn't have an angry mob in here, but you know how to work with the crowd and at the same time maintain order.
One of the terms we use on a regular basis is read the room. Watch the people who are interacting fine and everything like that. But if someone becomes, say, elevated or escalated or boisterous, those are the ones you keep an eye on. And you just slowly sneak up to them and just be in close proximity.
Yeah. So I wanted to, and we'll do, you're a great. I should tell people as well that you've had a long career in broadcasting. People are going to recognize that voice after you retired as an Edmonton police officer. You were an air traffic reporter for Global News and for a lot of radio stations. So very comfortable behind a mic. I'm wondering if you want to take a look at one of these monitors around us, and we're going to replay a portion of the video that was captured in Belleville, Ontario. So this is the Prime Minister after meeting with the mayor of Belleville. He's there to attend a farmer's market, and he's going to be talking to people, he hoped, at that point about their Canada childcare benefit, but everything kind of went sideways. Mm-hmm. There's an angry mob there with profane signs, Trump flags, and fuck Trudeau flags, and all kinds of wild stuff. People screaming and calling him a pedophile and a traitor. I'm wondering if you can focus your attention on the security detail, and maybe talk to us, Johnny. Let's roll it. Maybe talk to us about what's probably going through their minds and how they're managing this situation.
Well, as you can see, as the crowd elevates, and every one of those members is going to have radios, so they're going to be in constant contact with each other. But as the crowd gets closer to them, they tighten up. So they tighten up. You create that circle around your VIP, and plus somebody's going to be on the radio saying, let's get the vehicles up here. We got to find our exit out. This is all planned in the advance. Part of one of the more important roles of a VIP is having an advance, ways in and out, have your vehicles close position, and if it becomes too much of a problem, say we got to go now, and you just simply whisper that to a VIP. You explain that to them before the event itself, and say we're going now, and you're on your way out. You work with other agencies at the same time at these type of events.
What sort of things are you looking out for? I mean, they've all got their sunglasses on, their heads are on swivels. What you see the one guy looking down there, the other one's looking up. What are they keeping an eye out for?
It's always watch hands. Hands. You're watching hands. You're watching people's eyes. If you see somebody really like veins popping in the forehead, that's a problem right there. So they're going to slowly make their way towards that person and prevent any action towards the VIP.
How close is too close?
If you ask me, that group there is way too close. I think there should have been an exit plan put into place at that point. The vehicles should be rolling up and say, sir, we have to go right now.
So the Prime Minister, as you can see, I mean, obviously he knows that his detractors are there. It's impossible to ignore. People are screaming in his face, but he's still stopping to pose for photos. He's got a smile on his face, probably because he recognizes immediately that this video is going to go viral, that millions of people are going to see it. So he wants to play it cool. Who's calling the shots in that situation? Is it the detail or is it the PM?
It's the detail itself. It becomes, when it's a crowd like that, the PM is not in charge. It's now security is running the show, and the team leader for that group is going to say, sir, we have to go now. And it'll be simple, just a tug on the elbow or something like that, which is the signal that we need to leave.
What would have been your gut instinct in that scenario? You see the crowd outside, and you can tell that there are some friendlies, but you can tell that the crowd is hostile as well. It's very obvious. Do you think it was a mistake for the PM to wade out there in the first place?
I believe, if I was TL on that, I'd say it's too hostile here. We're going to miss the photo op, and we're going to get in the vehicles and take off.
Yeah.
It just lowers the expectation of any sort of confrontation with anybody out there. You can see it's an angry mob. If there's Trump flags and everything like that, it's going to go sideways one way or another. They handled it incredibly well, but you see the size of the team? That's a much bigger detail than you normally see with the Prime Minister.
Okay, yeah. So, Johnny, maybe we'll just even roll it again, because, I mean, I'm always interested in your insights. This is like me. I'll watch sports highlights. I'll watch a goal 6-7 times. But how many people? So you're counting on that detail. There's at least 5, 6, 7 people there with the Prime Minister.
There's at least 6 there. You see the entire everybody with a black vest is RCMP. Every one of them. Now, when he moves to the vehicle, that's now increased to 10. So the support vehicles, because the motorcade is going to be at least 3 or 4 vehicles. Guys are bailing out. They're getting a safe route to the vehicle so they can get them out.
Is it like, generally speaking, culturally, do you think we get too close to our politicians? I mean, like when we see this, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm not trying to be sensational, but I think of American politicians that have been shot. I think Ronald Reagan shot and survived. JFK shot and obviously killed. Some of those at distance, but sometimes the assaults happen a little bit closer. I think about Jean Chrétien and the so-called Shawinigan handshake that we were talking about yesterday. Actually, we pulled some video of it here from the CBC archives. We'll let the CBC know here. Let's transition to this. I mean, here's Canada's former Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, in the crowd, and same sort of a deal, right? Like, you got some people with bullhorns. You know that maybe the crowd won't be entirely friendly, but all of a sudden, there's one, and here's the PM. Everybody, look at this. There's the choke right there, caught on camera. That guy walked up unimpeded and introduced himself right to the PM.
So from that incident there, it was we have to reevaluate our details when it comes to the PM. The low key of Canada in the 80s and the 70s has changed dramatically. Politics has changed dramatically. Security plays a key role with any VIP. And part of their budgeting when they have an event or something like that nowadays is to include security. With the PM, because he's an internationally protected person and the RCMP have the right and are the team to cover him, they have the resources to increase that team. But the advanced team, working with the EAs and everything like that, there has to be constant communication on what's our best route in and out of this building.
Yeah, but then you know what the politicians are going to say, right? If the security detail tells Justin Trudeau that at his big announcement on the 7-year anniversary of the Canada Child Care benefit, that he's not going to be able to go out and mix and mingle, that he's not going to be able to shoot selfies with his supporters, that he could be spun as scared or running away, he's probably going to fight against the advice, right?
From his team, let's go out, see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, we'll just exit out. I guarantee you that's how it was played. The PM said, I'm going to take advantage of this. This is the 7th anniversary. I'm still going to go out and glad hand and make my face visible. But from a security standpoint, you are really looking at a possibly dangerous situation.
Yeah. How much can you tell us about the work that you do? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to get a VIP out of a situation because it started going sideways?
Because of the amount of experience that our guys have, we literally say to the VIP, if we're going to an event at Rogers Place or we say simply to the VIP, if I come to you and say, we got to go, it's not a question of I'm asking you, I'm telling you, we got to go. In dealing with some of our sports celebrities here in Edmonton, who are adored even decades later, they get swarmed wherever they go. So my role, our team's role, is to get them in safe and sound.
Have you noticed that the public behavior changes? I mean, you talked about politically speaking, how security details for high-profile politicians have changed since the 70s or 80s. What about the general public and how they interact with people?
Well, as you even saw in that little clip there, the verbal abuse that he's getting, the signs and the derogatory signs, it's all part of their role. They accept that, but people are becoming more aggressive. If they think it's their right to talk to you disgustingly and talk about your family. And we've had incidents over the years, and they think they're allowed to do that. But from a security standpoint, if they're that worked up, even on social media, what are they going to be like at the event? And these are things you take into consideration.
Well, that was what I talked about with Adler yesterday, and he went off on what I thought was a great rant. I mean, invoking Russia and China and North Korea, and people can check out that interview if they haven't seen it already. I would never suggest that someone should be, unless it's uttering threats, obviously, but calling names. I don't think you should wind up in jail for calling names. But when you're starting to scream at politicians, like you said, with the veins popping, invoking words like pedophile and traitor, like when anger is running your show, when you become so discombobulated, physical action can be just a hair's distance away.
A fraction of a second away, because they are that worked up. They've now lost common sense. They now are lost in what they believe in, and their target is right there in front of them. I'm going to take advantages. Or I'm going to have my 50 minutes of fame, or I'm going to do what I need to do to get my point across.
Yeah.
From a security standpoint, walls up. And if that person says, well, sir, you're going to have to come with me, and then he dictates how it goes. But our teams are ready to do whatever we have to do to make sure our VIP is safe.
Yeah, so you're obviously still working, and people can check out what you do at hayworkdriving.net, and we'll put that in our show notes. So you're still working in executive protection.
That's correct.
But you've been retired from policing for coming up on 20 years. About 18 years ago, you retired. Are you still in touch with men and women that are still on the force? Do you have some insights into how policing remains the same or has drastically changed since you retired?
It has drastically changed. So the way I'm explained to members on the job now, I was a pre-charter guy. So we weren't accountable. Honestly, we ran the streets like the Wild West back in the 70s and 80s. It was knockdown, drag-out fights every Saturday, every Friday night. And now with the people or the police being held more accountable, that's a huge thing. With social media, with the cameras and everything like that. One of my pet peeves is an officer's in trouble and somebody's filming it rather than helping me. I honestly, that's my own personal opinion. I just don't get it.
Did you ever experience, I guess people didn't have camera phones back in the day,
No.
So.
I only broke my nose 6 times on the job.
6
Yeah.
times?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you tell one of the stories?
Probably the last time, loading a guy in the back of the car in handcuffs and he headbutt me. But old school, I guess I was too close. He says, yep, and we're done. And that was it. Off to jail he went. There was no, I'm dragging him out and I'm going to give him a licking or anything like that. It was simply, I got too close, lesson learned.
Wow. You can't even tell, pal.
Oh, yeah.
Your nose looks great.
I've been for surgery already. So
okay. So it's been fixed.
Yeah.
It's been fixed.
Yeah.
What's the coolest part about your job?
Right now?
Yeah.
Meeting these VIPs and just realizing how down to earth they really are.
Can you tell us about one that really resonated with you? Can you tell us about?
I'll tell you about Wayne Gretzky, probably the nicest guy in the world. And what's even better, his kids are all down to earth, really, really good people. And Wayne treats everybody with complete respect. He knows what an icon he is here in Canada, and yet takes his time to meet as many fans as he possibly can.
So what would be a situation where you're like walking Wayne Gretzky through somewhere where the general public is? Are there ever like spontaneous moments? You're just walking down the street with him?
I can give you a great example. The last night at Rexall Place, 2 minutes before the second period ends, he's in a suite. We have to get back to his suite. And I said, we have to go now. We step out. He stops to sign one thing. 100 people had us surrounded in 2 seconds. They were coming over top of us. But again, not to be malicious or anything. It's Wayne Gretzky. They will never have this opportunity again. It really is quite something when he walks into a room.
Wow. Chris Hayden, thanks so much for making time for us. Again, people can learn more about what you do by checking out hayworkdriving.net. You don't have to be Wayne Gretzky to hire you guys, right?
No,
you still do like classy airport transport and all kind of. You want to impress your family. You want to impress your new bride or your new husband by booking secure and VIP transport to the airport. Maybe you guys do all kinds of cool stuff.
We're transporting all the bands at K-Days right now. So I've driven the Beach Boys. I've driven Ice Cube. So it's pretty cool. Here in Edmonton, this sort of thing goes on. It's just not high profile. We're a boutique business, we like to call ourselves.
What's Ice Cube like?
He said maybe 3 words.
Yeah.
And I maybe got a little aggressive with my driving. He says, I need you in L.A., he said to me. So.
Okay, you were getting him there on time.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, well, you're used to seeing it from the Whirlybird, so you know. That's Chris Hayden from Haywork Driving. You can check him out at hayworkdriving.net. Thanks for making time for us, pal.
Thank you, Ryan.
It's great to see you as always. Really appreciate that. That conversation is presented by our friends at California Closets. Of course, you know they're the proud presenters of our Mixlr live audio streaming right here on the show. I am, and my wife Carrie, we are like a success story for California Closets. We hired them about 10 years ago because our space, well, quite frankly, it just looked Bush League. We had stuff piled up on top of other stuff. Our organization was a real issue. Our closets in our older home just weren't sufficient for what we needed. And so we met with their team. It was a free consultation. They came up with a plan and then implemented it beautifully. It's so cool for me to have a chance to work with them 10 years later, talking to you about what a dramatic impact they've had on our quality of life and the value of our home. I also want to remind you that while California Closets are known for obviously their custom closets and their storage solutions for the entire home, they've got a brand new focus on garages, the workhorse of the home. Gone are the days of your rakes and shovels laying on the floor, your bikes leaning up against the GT Snow Racer, the spare set of tires right next to the lawnmower. You're tripping over stuff. You can't find things when you need them. California Closets to the rescue. They do garages better than anybody else in the business. You can get that conversation started with them today at californiaclosets.ca. Obviously, it's the time of year where the weather is amazing, and so more people than at any other time of the year are checking out the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, probably in part because of their seasonal blizzard menu. For a limited time only, you can check out the cotton candy blizzard treat, the choco-dipped strawberry blizzard treat, the caramel fudge cheesecake blizzard treat, the Reese's caramel pretzel blizzard treat, and my personal recommendation, friends, the s'mores blizzard treat. Summer was made for s'mores, and with the DQ s'mores blizzard treat, you can get your sweet, chocolatey, gooey, marshmallowy fix without the fuss of building a campfire. You can find them at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Also, a shout out to our friends at Local Environmental Services. If you're a decision maker for a municipality anywhere in Alberta or Saskatchewan, or you're making a decision on behalf of a business, it doesn't matter if it's a small takeout restaurant or a huge shopping mall or hotel, you're going to want to save money, but keep excellent service levels when it comes to your garbage and recycling collection, right? Well, that's what Local Environmental Services guarantees. You can request a quote today at localenvironmental.ca and learn more about partnering with them to, well, basically tick whatever boxes you need ticked. Whether it's residential or commercial collection, water hauling, vacuum truck services, fencing, or even portable toilets, Local Environmental Services does it all. And every Friday here on the show, they proudly present trash talk. If you've got something you need to get off your chest, make sure to send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Trash Talk is proudly presented by Local Environmental Services. I thought you might like that story of Chris Hayden transporting Ice Cube. Yeah, that would be that'd be a pretty cool job, driving bands around.
Yeah, I want to hear more from him. I want to hear more
stories.
stories. We should do a whole show with him.
That
I bet
would
he's
be
got
so
a lot
cool.
of the backstage stories, if you know what I mean.
Those are the ones he wouldn't be able to tell us, probably. But really neat guy, obviously, and certainly does a great job when it comes to not just rolling out their services, but explaining why they do what they do. And I thought that was great insight into what would have been going through the minds of the Prime Minister's security detail.
Seemed very knowledgeable. Yeah.
He's got a lot
About
of experience
everything going on,
in policing and all kinds of stuff. Executive protection. That's a pretty cool job title.
And we were right. Like you and me, when we watched this video, when we came in that morning, we were like, these people are on way too long of a leash.
Way too close.
Like the orange shirt guy at one point, like pushes one of the security guards and he just kind of like tells him to calm down. Like, isn't that grounds for like out of here?
Yeah. Well,
like how much more do you have to do before you're kicked out of an event?
Yeah, and there's that lady screaming at the RCMP officer saying, "Get your hands off me!"
Yeah.
And someone left a comment on my Twitter that's like, if that happened in the U.S. and you shove a secret security officer, like you're like tased, bro.
Well, I think also what he was saying. I don't think this event would have happened in the States this way. I don't think those people would have been that close. I don't think there would have been those dogs barking, so to speak, that close to someone. It just seems like, and I get it, Canada, we're a little more lenient, which is why it's so mind-boggling that people are like, we're living in a prison here. Like, look at these people. They're doing whatever they want. Feet. Inches at some point from the leader of the country. Like it's crazy.
So I post our highlight clip yesterday on my Twitter at Ryan Jesperson, and I asked, do Canadians have too much access to our politicians? I say there's no way, and work with me here, Real Talkers. You see if you can spot any sort of partisan comment here. There's none. I say there's no way an angry mob should be able to get this close to a prime minister. Are we waiting for a worst case scenario before making changes? In other words, are we waiting for a prime minister to get shot or stabbed before we make changes on how accessible they are to the public? Did you happen to step into the dumpster fire that is my comments on this?
I went on it this morning and I was like, I'm just going to zen out before, because I'm sure Ryan's going to go through this. But before you go on, any politician, like the stuff that happened with Singh downtown,
Jagmeet Singh,
Jesus, like it's happening more frequently.
Absolutely. Robin Brownlee, by the way, for those of you that know broadcasting in Alberta, says at the very least, this is great, any unhinged saliva spraying chud like Mr. Orange Shirt stepping to the president of the United States as aggressively as this would be tased and face down on the pavement in a big hurry, and rightfully so. He says this guy, meanwhile, is on Twitter a day later running his big yap again.
Of course.
We have it, right? Do we want to get to this video? This is the guy. Maybe not. Maybe we didn't grab it, but this is the guy. You can find the guy on Twitter. He's the guy that was basically screaming at the prime minister is on Twitter yesterday saying, "I'm not running. I'm not hiding." He says, we'll link to it in the show notes so you can check it out. He says, "I'm not." He says, "No, I'm right here." He says, "This is my name. This is my parents' surname. This is where you can find me." Now, I'm not sure that he committed a crime, and so I don't know that he's going to get nailed for it, but Robin's exactly right on that. Lit Tie says, "I thought the same thing, Ryan. Some people were so close they could have reached out and punched him. The Prime Minister needs to rethink how close he gets to people. Too many have expressed wanting to hurt the PM, and he would not get away with doing a chrétien in a crowd these days." Everybody knows what doing a chrétien means, right? The Shawinigan handshake. But then the comments get a little bit weird. Like Ryan says to me, "May I remind you, they are public servants. They are no more or less than any other citizen. They need to see firsthand as to what their actions result in," which is a bizarre take.
Got the video here. That
Chris.
guy,
Oh yeah. Well, why don't we play it?
Hey,
This is the guy that was screaming.
This
at
is
the
Orange
PM.
Shirt.
This is Orange Shirt that's calling him a pedophile and a traitor. And here he is one day later on social media.
Hello, everybody. Just thought I'd come make this video due to the fact that everybody's found out that there's a bunch of people looking.
This for you guys.
Sure.
There you go.
Chris on the live comment.
Hello, everybody. Just thought I'd come make this video due to the fact that everybody's, found out that there's a bunch of people looking for me due to the fact of the protests in Belleville the other day chasing Trudeau out of town. Well, I'm not hiding. Here I am. Thought I'd save you guys the headaches. My name's Bear, also known as Ed, son of the Casey family. My social media is Ed, KC, just how it's said. Look me up, find me, come talk to me, whatever. Here I am, not going anywhere. Also, just want to put it out there that there's all this talk saying that I support Pierre Poilievre, and there was talk about Trump and all that. I don't support anybody that infringes on our natural rights. So no, I don't support any of them. I don't support any of the parties out there right now. If First Nations were to start a party, that'd be awesome in my books. I would love that. I would totally support that. But yeah, something like the Dutch did. The farmers started a new party. That's what needs to happen. But still won't support it if they're infringing on any of our natural rights. That's for sure. So if you're starting a new party and you're not infringing on our natural rights, I will back you all the way. I will campaign for you, whatever. But yeah, I'm making a longer video. This was just a quick one because I knew everybody was looking for me. Just so I wanted to let everybody know where I am. Let you know I'm not hiding, not running. I am standing strong right here.
All right.
Not going nowhere.
So there he is. That's Bear, and he wants to talk about his natural rights, which sounds like kind of a Freeman on the land type thing.
I will say there's been a lot of people saying, he was an American, that they busted American. There's all this other stuff that people have been telling us to talk about that we know isn't confirmed and isn't true. So it was nice to just at least hear who the guy was.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen to these comments, right? So Chris says to me, do you think that Trudeau accidentally walked into this? He says, he's the agitator in chief. He did this on purpose, the Prime Minister did, because he wants Canadians to turn on each other. Chris says, this is no poor Justin moment. It's him doing what he does best, which is instigate hate and division and play victim himself. Many people say, Anne says, it's strange that only a few leaders in the world are afraid of being out in public. We have Justin Trudeau and there's Macron in France. They're afraid of their own citizens. I didn't respond to Anne. I'm not responding. I stopped myself from responding.
He
doesn't look afraid to me. The whole point is that he's not afraid. But the replies kind of got taken over, and but a whole bunch of people, for example, people are saying here's hoping. Biker Jay says, some are waiting, some are hoping. I say, what are we waiting for? Worst case scenario? Remember my original tweet, worst case scenario? Biker Jay, some are waiting, some are hoping, he says. A proud Albertan, says, we can only hope. Wobbler says, it was staged. Cheryl says, it was orchestrated in an attempt to boost his image. Why else the extra on-the-ground vests in tight formation? Oh, I don't know, Cheryl. I can't possibly imagine why there may have been RCMP in identifiable vests in tight formation around the Prime Minister. I can't possibly imagine. People, a lot of people saying, yeah, if we're lucky, something will happen. Someone else tweeting from, and this is not the official CFL team here in Edmonton, but they've snagged that Twitter handle, says maybe our Prime Minister shouldn't be so dividing and untrustworthy. There's a lot of justification. You can see how many muted. Can you see if you're looking on the screen how many replies are from accounts that I've muted? This is some insight into my life here. But a lot of people, Joser says it's staged. What's Wrong 99 says he likes it. He invites it. It's all to promote division to get reelected. Captain Hank says it's well scripted to generate outrage and sympathy for the Trudeau dictatorship and justification for more lockdowns.
These extreme... the conspiracy theories are always the easiest because they're impossible to prove, right? So you can literally just say anything oh, this is all theater. And it's I think he's just outside trying to, and I don't think he enjoyed any of that. Even though he is smiling and trying to get through it, acting as if he wanted to be out there. Man, I would not. I would be on edge the whole time. I would have gotten out of there, honestly.
And sure, it's extremely high profile when something like that happens to the Prime Minister, but there are microaggressions and there are instances like this not as high profile, but like this, the name calling,
That
the
happened
verbal
all the
abuse.
time.
That happened all the time. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of good people have absolutely zero interest in participating in politics. You're not going to get good people into politics if this is what people understand politics to be like.
Ben on our chat says he's a narcissist, and
That Trudeau is a narcissist?
I mean, if you're going to be a politician, it's kind of like you
Comes
have
with
to
the
be.
territory. It's like somebody saying, yeah, the politician's an egomaniac. Yeah.
Kind of have to love yourself
Kind of have to
a
be.
lot.
You kind of have to think that you're better than everybody else. Choose me. That's literally what campaigns
I
are.
can save you.
Choose me. I'm literally better than all the other candidates. You know, we also rolled out an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll yesterday, just out of curiosity. We're talking about where media's going. An interesting commentary yesterday from Matt Kundle, who talked to us about Bill C-18, that's the Online News Act, and his take on it. He thinks that the feds are out of line. He thinks that the Liberals are blowing it on trying to save Canadian media, and he gave us his own proposal on how he would save journalism in Canada. You can catch that interview. That was just yesterday, July 24th. But it prompted the question. We were wondering, what media do you pay for? Like, as things evolve, as people's habits change, no longer is everyone just paying for their basic cable package and then the paper copy of the newspaper delivered to their door. Circa 1990, you know, there was always the one family on the street that had Super Channel. It was never us, but someone always had Super Channel.
Gotta get over there. They've always got movies.
They've always got movies, non-stop movies around the clock. So we asked, what media do you pay for? You know, cable packages, streaming services, Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus, Apple, newspaper subscriptions, print or digital, independent outlets like Real Talk on Patreon. And by the way, Ken, don't think we didn't just notice your super chat contribution, $5 in our YouTube chat to show your appreciation for today's episode. Boy, do we ever appreciate that. The studio audience loves to see Ken doing that. We asked you to reply with details and said we'd read some of your comments on today's show. So we've got about 950 votes right now. 82% say that they pay for several different services. I'm not surprised to see that. 4 out of 5. About 13% say that they pay for just one, and 4% of our respondents say that they currently pay for none. And I thought it might be kind of cool to go through here. So
Can we start with you, though? What do you have at home?
Okay, so, well, why don't we talk us and Real Talk? I'm going to go off the top of my head, so I'll probably forget stuff. But at home, we've got like the full robust cable package. So we've including all the cable news,
sports.
We've got sports package and all that. Then during the NHL season, we have the NHL package, so you get all the games. And then we subscribe to Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and Apple TV.
Me too.
So we've got 4. And then here at Real Talk, we subscribe to the Edmonton Journal. We subscribe to the Globe and Mail, to the Toronto Star, to the Washington Post, to the New York Times, to the Athletic. We support on Patreon the Strategists. We support the Sprawl down in Calgary. We support, I know I'm forgetting one. I can't remember.
And then also YouTube Premium and Spotify.
YouTube Premium,
and,
Spotify Premium, Apple Music. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot.
I'm pretty much all of those, and then add in there also my partner loves Crave. So I was looking at them last night on our Apple TV, and I was like, I really should add this all up at the end of the month this month, because it is a lot of money, and I didn't realize. So
what a lot of people were saying in the comments on our Twitter poll, people were saying that if you take the cable package out, then and then you add all the streaming services, you're going to cut your bill by a huge amount. And I think that fewer and fewer people are justifying paying for all those channels that they don't need anymore. And that's where I think personally that the biggest behavior change is happening. Like consumer behavior I'm talking about. Cam in a pizzeria says the day that I can, it's so fun to say. Cam's been such a good friend of our shows for years and years. And so he's earned the delivery of his name. He says the day that he can stream live Oilers games reliably, he says his TV package will be gone. So there's a guy with an example. He's paying for Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple TV, and Prime. And then he's a Patreon supporter for Real Talk and Strategist, which we sure appreciate. And Cam wants to let us know that he is not an $8 chuckle fuck.
And I was just going to say, we also use CBC Gem here in the studio. We use Sportsnet Now. We use we use everything. We literally use everything. So, and I think if you could incorporate all that, because I think that's why I still have cable, is because I want to watch live news and live award shows.
Yeah. For a lot of people, that's it. Like
Occasional free Oilers games, etc. Yeah,
and live sports is obviously where advertising revenues are still healthy because advertisers know that people don't want to watch the game 6 hours later. People don't want to scroll through it as fast as they can. Alain says that they cut their cable in about 11 years ago. Says they cut down the cost on their cell phones, their home phone, their internet as well. He says, I have the details in a note somewhere, but I've saved huge amounts of money over the years. T to the 6 pays for basic cable in sports only to watch hockey. Says they pay for YouTube Premium, and that's it. They say there's always a new way to watch shows, and this fall I might just drop my cable, keep the internet, and pay for an IPTV service. Sean
sounds
says
like a
he's
pirater there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Sean says that he is subscribed to death, which I think sort of I revealed myself to be that as well. Terry McConnell, well-known journalist and author. Terry wrote a great book about Peter Pocklington back in the day with Jalen Nye. Terry says subscribe to the whole caboodle. He says, though I'm not sure precisely what constitutes a caboodle. Well played, Terry. Cable TV at home, satellite TV on their RV. That there, Clark, that's an RV. Internet at both. He's got a print subscription to the Globe, digital subscriptions to WAPO and the LA Times, and he says in streaming from, well, practically all of them.
Wow.
Sleepy Dad says that all of his streaming services are about to get canceled. I wonder what the story is there. It might just be a bottom line deal. That might be one of the Canadians that right now is having to get creative to make sure that they can make their bills every month.
But also, I wish we could be like that. I feel like the reason we have, like speaking specifically about the studio, all these subscriptions is we need to for our career. Now, if I was retired or something, maybe I would just have Netflix, or maybe I would just have a single subscription that provided me with entertainment because I'm in the backyard or I'm at the lake house or whatever I'm doing in retirement, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like people, especially with careers in media, need all these things. And then some people just like keeping up with pop culture and they need all those things. I wish it was a package. I wish you could just get like 5 things in one, but
they're all fighting
never
against
gonna
each other,
that
though,
way.
right? Yeah. Hey, I want to give a big shout out to Ken here, who bailed me out because I obviously forgot to mention our magazine subscriptions here. We obviously subscribe to Alberta Views, and we subscribe to Edify as well. Ken says I subscribe to both Edify and Alberta Views because of Real Talk. Ken, my man, that's awesome to hear. And don't forget that you can use the AVRJ promo code. Let me do that right now, Johnny. Why don't we show everybody the website? If you go to albertaviews.ca and use that promo code AVRJ, just think Alberta Views, Ryan Jesperson, you can save 50% off a 1-year subscription to Alberta Views, which is an awesome deal. It winds up being $20 for 10 issues delivered right to your door. Alberta Views is the magazine for engaged citizens, and you can find them online again at albertaviews.ca. We'll put that promo code into the show notes in case you missed it if you're streaming live. But yeah, so I mean, just a ton of different approaches from Real Talkers on how you're getting your entertainment, what you're paying for, and what you're not. Darth Cleric says, I dropped cable last year. I get Prime, Disney, YouTube Premium. A lot of people on YouTube Premium and rotate between Crave and Netflix depending on what we want to binge. They say Prime's the main service because they can just add channels. YouTube Premium, they say, is underrated and their best value. There was something
YouTube
back
Premium
here.
is really good. I was on YouTube Premium for like two hours last night.
Yeah, ads, right?
Visual podcasts, all sorts of stuff like that. It's
Alyssa says she's a pay-as-needed person. So if there's a new show on like Netflix or Crave or Prime, she'll pay for a month. And then she says the only one she pays for consistently is Apple One for music news and Apple TV. See, Alyssa's clearly much more organized than I am. To subscribe to something 1 month, unsubscribe, I just lose track.
I couldn't do that.
No, I can't do that.
But the Apple One is perfect. So basically all my apps are in Apple TV Plus. So Prime, Disney, Crave, YouTube. So all I have to do is search within Apple TV and it'll find where it is and open that app. And that's basically why I have them all.
How about this one from Dale? Dale uses an antenna for local TV. Does that still work?
The bunny ears?
I guess.
Or on the roof?
Maybe on the roof? I don't know. I should ask him. Here, I'm going to reply to him live on the show. I'm going to say, tell us more. We'll see if he tells us more. If he does it live, I'll read it. So he uses an antenna and pays for Netflix on the side. Says, I get my hockey night in Canada in 720p on Saturday night. So not necessarily.
Not bad.
Not bad. What is it, 720, 1080, and 4K?
There's one in between there. There's
Okay.
full HD.
Okay.
And then there's
He says, he says that's good enough for me. Yeah, fair enough. Favente Well says the basic cable and sports, but and Netflix as well. Though if they keep rising those costs, it's getting kiboshed.
We just talked about this yesterday, and
That's pretty
literally
funny.
we got the email right after we got off air.
Johnny's talking about all these services bumping up their prices by $1 a month, $2 a month, and literally as we signed off from the show, I checked my email and Spotify Premium's letting me know that they're jumping up by $1 a month, which is, on one hand, you go $1 a month, what's the big deal? But if you have like 10 or 15 services over the course of a year, you're talking close to $175. I mean, it's a bit of a bigger deal, right? So you can let us know what you think about this. Send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We're always curious to know where you're getting your information and how you're consuming your information. And isn't it so true that everybody's habits are changing in a big way? And, I mean, to say the very least, I mean, all of this prompted by talk about saving journalism in Canada, right? The big broadcasters aren't investing in news. They say because they can't afford to do it, because they say they don't have the ad dollars, because they say that advertisers are going to big tech like Meta and Google, right? You know, we heard yesterday from Matt Kundle saying that Chorus says that they're not going to be sending any more money to Meta. They're not advertising on Meta. And Kundle asked the very fair question, what the hell were you doing that for in the first place, right? That's part of the problem right there. If you have insight on this, maybe a perspective that you haven't heard on the show, we would love to hear from you. It's so great to welcome guests like Chris Hayden into this studio because, quite frankly, we're pretty proud of this space. It was a space that was built by our friends at Complete Care Restoration. And if you're looking to renovate a space, it could be a home, it could be an office, heck, it could be an entire office building, we recommend them with 2 thumbs up. Now, they've made their name helping people get back on their feet from disaster. They're experts in helping people get their lives back after fire or flood damage. You know, sometimes what you might think is a relatively small renovation project becomes a whole lot bigger if you discover mold or asbestos. Complete Care Restoration can manage that as well. They employ in-house personnel to deal with a variety of materials and situations that can be part of any claims process. Their staff is trained and certified in asbestos removal and mold remediation. You can learn more by visiting their website, completecarerestoration.ca. Now, I got a bit of egg on my face. We signed off yesterday, and I completely forgot a Monday tradition. I think I was so excited about the conversations we were having that I left something really, really neat on the table.
Or was it my fault because I didn't remind you?
Well,
I think we'll both take half the blame.
No, if you would take 10% of the blame, I would find that to be appropriate.
Okay.
And I will accept 90% of the blame because it's not your job to remind me, though it would have been cool if you did. And we had a very quick team meeting after.
Cooler if you did,
It'd be a lot cooler if you did. Johnny looks at me after the show and he says, he goes, "You forgot to do positive reflections." And I went, "Oh!" And he goes, "Should I have reminded you?" And I said, "Well, I mean, it was my fault, but it was a lot cooler if you did." So here's the deal. You know this. Typically, it happens on Mondays with the first show of the week. Our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today at kubyenergy.ca. They give us reason to smile. They restore our faith in humanity. They show us the silver linings. Now who doesn't know the tradition of Nicky 9-door or whatever the kids call it these days, right? In this week's episode of Positive Reflections, we're going to show you doorbell cam footage. This is footage captured from a doorbell camera. It's kids that are running around, ringing doorbells, and then running away. It's one of the hilarious pranks that you can perpetrate as a 10-year-old. But listen to what this kid says on this doorbell camera. Johnny, I want to start it again from the beginning because this kid's getting ahead of the prank, okay? He's running ahead of the other kids. We don't know what city this is in. We don't know the little guy's name. This is the Southwest News Service that pushed this out. Listen to the message that this kid leaves on a doorbell camera, not knowing if anybody's ever going to hear it.
You can see me. Get out of here, bub. And you matter, alright? There's always going to be somebody that cares about you. And you're a good person. No matter what people say, you matter. Ignore them. They're losers. The ding-dong ditching you. I'm just trying to say something nice. Like, I don't know what they're doing. They're running away and stuff. I'm just trying to say that you matter, man. Or girl. Whoever you are, you matter to someone. Just keep that in mind. Don't forget that.
Can you imagine if there were more people like that little guy on the face of this earth? Can you imagine how much better life would be? So, taking a page from his book will remind you that you've made it to this point in the show because maybe you needed to be reminded that you matter and you're important and we value you. Thank you for being a part of this episode of Real Talk. Thank you for being a part of this community. And thanks to our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy for presenting positive reflections every week right here on the show. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to take another look at some of the emissions storylines coming out of the Canadian oil and gas sector. Markham Hislop of Energy Media has a follow-up to his explosive report that he outlined here on Real Talk about a month ago. Want to let you know that coming up later in this week, you're going to hear from Alberta's official opposition leader, Rachel Notley. And coming up on Friday, a roundtable on branding, inspired by Twitter's move to X. We're going to look at smart brand moves, devastating brand moves, and what a brand says to the rest of us. We'll talk to you again soon.